YouTube, Shuki here with a review of the Power Rangers Legacy Collection figures Wave 1. So this wave gives us the red, yellow, and blue Ninja Storm Wind Rangers, as well as the red and green Mighty Morphin Rangers. For those of you that don't know, here's a quick rundown of the Legacy Collection figures. What these are a 6-inch scale figure, so yes, it's an all-new scale. It's more in line with Marvel Legends and DC Universe and stuff like that. So those high-grade collector sort of figures. And what you do, basically, is you buy the figures, and each figure comes with a Build-A-Figure piece of the Megazord. So as you can see, the Storm Megazord is behind these guys. So how this worked is the Red Ranger came with the torso and the head of the Storm Megazord. The Blue Ranger came with her arm as well as one of the legs, while the Yellow Ranger came with his arm and one of the legs. And together with those three figures, you could complete the Storm Megazord figure. The Red Ranger here comes with the body of the Dino Megazord from Mighty Morphin, the original Megazord, and that's all we got. The 6 Rangers, like Tommy over here, the Green Ranger, come with additional accessories instead. So he comes with the Sword of Darkness as well as 2 additional hands so that he can be posed like he's playing the Dragon Dagger. So there is that. As you can see down here, because of how big and massive the Build-A-Figure ends up being, the Wind Rangers only have their swords as an accessory. They don't have their additional individual weapons. They do have holstered versions that can plug in on their back, and we'll take a look at those. And the Red Ranger, unfortunately, only comes with the Blade Blaster in a weird pocket mode. Like, it's not even any of the modes he actually uses to attack with. It's just a holstered mode. It's really dumb. But getting all these little accessories out of the way, each of these costs $19.99 a piece, though people are finding them on clearance at Walmart, so hey, maybe if you hit it lucky. But yeah, so these were originally spotted at Target, but have since been found at Walmart's and Toys R Us stores, and I think maybe even Kmart stores as of right now. So all sorts of places to get these, $19.99 a piece. Are they worth it? Let's find out. If you want to take a look at the packaging of these, I will have pictures of all the packaging for all 5 releases in my photo gallery on my blog. So do check that out if you want to see the packages of these. They are actually pretty cool packages. But here are the Wind Rangers. We'll take a look at them first because they're a complete team, so to speak. Granted, we're missing the Thunder Rangers and we're missing Cam, but it's at least the core team, and it does complete the Megazord, which is exactly why they did this. They wanted to pick a core team of 3 so that right off the bat in the first wave you could complete one of the Megazords. Why they didn't just release a full team in one wave? Like start with Mighty Morphin? They didn't want to, I guess. But hey, it gives us different Rangers in the wave, so that it is kind of cool at the end of the day. So here is a quick rundown of how these figures work. We'll go ahead and set them aside and focus on good old Shane over here. They're very posable figures. Right out of the box, if you've handled figure arts before, these will feel very loose to you. They felt very floppy at first, but as you can see, I'm kind of moving him around. He's not actually that floppy. The joints are very fluid, is the term I like to use for these. They're not that tight, so they feel very loose when you're going to pose them. However, once you do, they're pretty solid. So it's really interesting how this actually works out. It kind of tricks you a little bit. But they are definitely very, very posable and very solid figures. In terms of the detail, the only obvious problem is the muscles. And those of you that collected Power Ranger toys for years, like I have, the muscles don't really bother you at this point. These are a lot more toned down than what we got during like In Space and stuff. In Space and Lightspeed Rescue, they were on some roids, man. But these aren't too bad. And I like the individual details. One of the reasons I ended up ultimately putting this in one video is because I wanted to show off the fact that these are all individually molded toys. Like, as you can see, the morphers on his wrist, his shoulder design is a little bit different. The boot design is obviously very different between the two figures. So they don't share a mold like a lot of the action hero molds did. They are all 100% individual molds. Now, obviously, the teams are going to share a base mold. like Dustin and Shane here will all feature the same base mold, and all of the male Mighty Morphin Rangers will all feature the same base mold. However, they all have their individual power coins molded in there as well, and we'll take a look at that once we start Jason's portion of this video. But in terms of articulation, all of the dude figures, aside from Tommy because he's got the shield and stuff, have full rotation here. It's just a pin and swivel joint right there. There is a swivel in the bicep right there. A double joint at the elbow, which is really cool. We've really never had Power Ranger figures with double joints. So that is really cool. You get a kind of figure arts-esque joint right there at the wrist. Please be careful when you're posing these. People have had their wrist joints break. I've had a few figure arts break like that as well. So please be careful when you're posing in the wrist area. There is an ab crunch in each figure, and each figure is painted to where when you're doing the ab crunch, it doesn't look super weird. I mean, it still looks elongated, but I like the fact that they actually decided to stretch the image down here so that it didn't like magically cut off in the middle or something like that. So that is a nice touch. So you have an ab crunch on each figure, a swivel at the wrist. I love the way these hips work. They're my favorite figure art joint when they did this hip style. It's pretty much a ball and socket swivel in there. I don't actually think it's a ball and socket. I think it's just a swivel system in there. But there is a swivel at the thigh. So not only do you get the full range of motion in the actual hip, you get a little bit of swivel there at the thigh as well. Double joint at the knee, and you get some cool toe action going on. It actually is a ratchet joint in there, which is kind of interesting. And you do get side-to-side movement on that ankle as well. So we got some hot ankle tilts going on. But yeah, so it's really nice. All in all, these figures are absolutely phenomenal. Biggest problem with the accessory count, obviously, is the fact that each Ninja Storm Ranger only includes this. That is all. And the fact that they couldn't even engineer one to just holster out is really obnoxious, because now you're stuck in a situation where if you want to pose them with the sword, you have to take this off. You take this off, their back is now inaccurate because these little holster parts never left their back unless they were using the gun mode, I believe, which I think is like that little tip right there. And you can't even transform this into the gun mode, so it's not like you can have them have the gun mode either. So you're stuck in this weird position, like, do I keep it on? Do I keep it off? So these are almost actually kind of pointless if you want to make an accurate display, which is kind of what I'm going for here. I'm probably not going to pose any of these guys with weapons anyway, just for space reasons. They're probably all going to be sitting fairly uniform. But it's just kind of a letdown that the Build-A-Figure, as cool as they are, and we'll take a look at the Storm Megazord in a moment, just kind of get in the way. So here's Dustin. Not a whole lot different in terms of detail-wise, just the typical differences, the helmet and the logo. But other than that, is the same base figure as Shane. Yeah, but I didn't really talk about the head rotation, but you can get full head rotation as well as a lot of up and down movement too. So these are actually really good for stop motions, honestly. Bruno's done some pretty cool stop motions with these already, and they all turned out pretty good. So not that anything they do really turns out bad ever, but so there we go. So there is Dustin. He'll hang out over here. And here is Tori, our only female of the wave. And the female mold's a little bit interesting. It's obviously got some pretty hefty boobage going on. I mean, look at that. But other than that, and the fact that there's a very, very thin waist going on here, it's kind of the typical like comic book-esque proportions that Power Ranger figures always have. They're very much styled after like your typical comic book representation of the male and female physique. But other than that, there are slits in the skirt, so thanks to that, she can get off a little bit more pose than she would be otherwise. Problem being, the skirt is made of a very non-pliable rubbery plastic. It's very thick. So it's not like she can get some side action going on, but it's not like she's going to be able to high kick in the front or anything like that. So while I appreciate the slit, it doesn't really work all that well. So no kicking for her. But obviously it's all the same articulation as the male mold, just done in a little bit smaller and thinner scale. So nothing too crazy there. So there are the 3 Wind Rangers, and if you purchase all 3 of them, you get all the pieces to this. So these figures are actually a blessing and a curse all at the same time. Biggest problem with these is, one, the fact that they take away from the accessories of the actual Rangers, which I think is a little bit of a bummer, but they're engineered really weird. Right off the bat, you could probably tell these are mix and morph joints. Big old fat ball and the big old fat socket. These are the old mix and morph joints that we have had for a couple, 2 years now? 2 years. Started at the beginning of Dino Charge, I believe. So yeah, that's a thing. We're using mix and morph for these, which I don't really mind. I never had a huge problem with the mix and morph joints. The issue being these sockets right here. And I don't mean the hip sockets. The hip sockets are fine. They're fine and dandy. It's this ankle socket right here. This should in no way, shape, or form be a mix and morph joint. Because you have all this going on in the leg. I don't know about you guys, but at my knee, I can't bend my knee like that. That's not how knees work. And granted, this is a robot, it doesn't really matter. But still, you're trying to like pose the legs and they're not that tight of joints. So like he starts flopping around and then like he looks like he's gonna pop a really big squat. And then if you put him like this, it looks like he needs to pee. It's kind of all over the place, and you're trying to just pose these legs, and these are so loose, and then up here is so tight, you can't get these good leg poses going with it looking like a natural pose. It takes way too much, like, finicking. I don't know the word I'm looking for, but they're really loose, and then stuff like that starts to happen. It's really obnoxious. I just wish that use mix and morph joints. That's perfectly fine because you can do some pretty cool things with these, and I'll show that off in a second. But when you're trying to pose these, it just kind of ultimately just flops around. There's no reason that, like, the arm joint right here is a normal single joint right there. Put that here in the knee, so we're not dealing with this. But unfortunately, that's what we're doing, so it is a little bit of a shame. But all in all, I like these collect and connect or build a figure, however you want to say it. I like this idea. I like collecting all the Rangers and like, oh, hey, you can make the Megazord now. That's a really cool thing. And yes, it's a bummer. It distracts from the accessory count. Detracts, rather, not distracts. But I think the end result is pretty cool. It's not as painted as it should be for what you're ultimately paying for it. But given what it is and how much plastic it actually is, I think it's pretty cool. In terms of articulation on these Build-A-Figures, you got a mix and morph joint up here that allows all range of motion on the head, full range of motion on the shoulders. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit hindered where that base connects, particularly in the shark here, you're losing, or the dolphin rather, you're losing a lot of side-to-side articulation. No swivels or anything, you just have this simple joint right there, so there's no kind of back and forth there, but it is what it is. Simple fists on this guy, so no weapons for him. Down here at the hips are fine. Y'all know how I feel about that knee joint right there. And you get some cool ankle tilts and stuff down here in the foot. So you get all sorts of movement. You can get all sorts of really cool poses for this guy, despite how long they may take with those really weird knee joints. So you can get really cool poses with this. So despite the fact that I really hate how those knees work, there is a really articulated Storm Megazord figure waiting for you at the end of the line. So, despite not having all of its paint details or anything like that, is a pretty cool feature and a pretty cool little figure. Jason ultimately isn't a bad figure. We've had a ton of articulated Red Rangers throughout the course of history. Whether this is the best one or not is kind of up to opinion. I think it's the most fun to pose. I enjoy posing these figures more than I actually do enjoy posing figure arts. And if you had his power sword like the Comic Con exclusive one does, like you can get a full-on like two-handed power sword grip going on that I unfortunately can't really show. I could have him borrow one of the Ninja Storm swords, I suppose, since they had their swords. But you can kind of get a whole two-handed sword grip going on, which is really cool. I mean, granted, you could do that with figure arts too, but I suck at posing, and these make life a little bit easier for me. So you can get all sorts of poses with these. There really isn't a whole lot else to go over with Jason. I love the fact that the power coin is molded in and fully painted and stuff. That looks really cool. The holster does come off. I think it's a separate piece in the box, so that plugs right in. Here's a look at the little blade blaster. Not the greatest thing in the universe. And again, the fact that all you get is a little holstered one, not one he actually uses to attack with, is very obnoxious. But hey, it's accurate to the show and look, I guess. So, moving Jason aside over here to my big mound of Rangers I got over here. Here is Tommy. And Tommy I just wanted to touch upon real quick, because one, not only does it look really cool, I like the way the shield looks on this figure. It's not overly big, it's not overly small. It doesn't hinder the ab crunch at all. Because as you can see, when you put all the way down in the ab crunch, it just kind of pokes into the morpher right here. So it doesn't actually bend or anything like that. So that is actually really cool that the ab crunch is still fully intact despite the shield. Speaking of, obviously you can't go all the way up, but you can do that. So that's not an absolute huge deal. But that's really the only difference on Tommy. I just wanted to show off the fact that they managed to engineer the ab crunch without hindering. How they do the White Ranger is a completely different story. I've seen the White Ranger figure at Morphicon, I just don't remember how they actually did it. But that is what it is. The default hands are the ones that come with all of the Rangers, the typical kind of weapon holding hands. So you can take the Dragon Dagger and you can put it in his hand over here if you want. And he does include the Sword of Darkness, because that's a Green Ranger thing now, is all the Green Ranger figures have to include the Sword of Darkness. And so that can be put into his other hand, so he can kind of dual wield these. And again, I suck at posing, so I apologize well in advance. But like I said, the range of articulation on these are really, really superb. And you can get all sorts of nice balance out of these because the joints are so fluid. So there's something like that. And included with him are 2 additional hands. I'm going to butcher this pose completely, I promise you that. To switch hands, you simply pull that out, take the additional hand, and plug it back in. Anyone that's seen any of my old figure art reviews before I stopped reviewing them know exactly how this is done. It's the same style, and it's also just as much of a pain in the butt to try to get them on. But there we go. So now we have that. Go ahead and do the other one. Told you I was going to butcher it, but hey, that's close enough, I guess. So, hooray. That's what those hands are for. He's got hands specifically for doing this singular pose. So while the Green Ranger comes with additional accessories, the Red Ranger obviously includes the Build-A-Figure component for the Dino Megazord, the original Megazord. The body in particular, because the Red Ranger generally will come with the body of the Megazord. So it's right here, you have nothing else, because no other Mighty Morphin figures are out yet. So you have no limbs. Thankfully, due to Power Morphicon, we do know what it will look like. Ultimately, we do have the mold, thanks to the Morphicon exclusive, which I will take a look at next. But other than that, right out of the box, just with this first wave, you can actually do some fun things. Now, I don't totally recommend doing this mix and match thing, because it, at first, kind of bent the dolphin up a bit, because I'm not really sure why. But you can actually go ahead. Like I said, the joint sizes are a little bit different, I feel, because it's kind of hard to kind of get that in. But you can connect the dolphin to the Megazord, and ultimately all of the Storm Megazord's limbs. This one in particular is a little bit difficult because it's just not made. It doesn't stick out as far as this joint does because of the lion, so it looks a little bit goofy. But you're just going to have to deal with that, and then you can take apart to this, and getting these joints in is kind of a pain. If you angle it just right, you can get in there. And if we take off this one, oh, got it. Then we can squeeze that joint in there, and then pop this joint back in. And now we have the Storm Megazord with the Dino Megazord's torso piece. There goes those weird knees again. So you can actually do some pretty fun things like that. Like I said, some of the joints are a little bit different sizes, so it might elongate your dolphin a little bit. It did mine, but then it kind of fixed itself. So I think the rubber just kind of slowly compressed back to where it was supposed to be. But yeah, so it'll be really fun to see what kind of mix and match possibilities we have later on in the line. Once the Astro Megazord is done, and the full Dino Megazord is actually done, and they announced Zeo at Power Morphicon, so we'll have the Zeo Megazord. So it'll be a lot of really cool mix and match opportunities, kind of like a little mini Zord builder. And this, in general, is kind of what I wanted the Mix and Morph line to be. Instead, they filled it with a bunch of Rangers and weirdly proportioned Zords. So, hey, it is what it is. But really cool. I like to build a figure aspect. I really do. It'll be interesting to see what we end up getting down the line. So that about does it for this Wave 1 video. Very, very long, and I do apologize for that. Like I said, I was going to do these in a Mighty Morphin video and a Ninja Storm video, but I ultimately wanted to start this series by showing off how different the molds actually were to one another, how you can connect the Megazord with the other pieces, and I figured that was a lot easier to show off in one singular video. If you would rather see me do them in teams, divide the wave by what teams they are, please let me know in the comments, and I will consider that for the Wave 2 video whenever those decide to come out next year. Hopefully soon. I don't want to wait. I like these a lot. I do love these figures. They're great figures. If you're going all in, it's going to be expensive. I mean, you're looking at over $100 with tax a pop for these at retail price per wave. And there's already 4 waves announced. So it is definitely a very expensive line in the long run. At the very least, I do recommend picking up your favorite Rangers. If you really like Ninja Storm or the Red Ranger or the Green Ranger from Mighty Morphin, honestly, those are going to probably be the biggest sellers. To the casual market anyway. Go ahead and pick them up. You won't be disappointed by these figures at all. Like I said, the joints feel loose, but they're very fluid and easy to pose, and I love that a lot. So overall, fantastic figures. I really want to see this line all the way through. I'm very much afraid that they're going to just end it after Wave 4. Actually, they announced up to Wave 5, I think, actually. But regardless, I'm afraid of the future. I'm afraid of what the future doesn't hold, to be honest. So that about does it for this review. If you like it, go ahead and blast that like button, comment below, and subscribe for more. So as always, thanks for watching, take care, and have a great one. Bye.